So today we are joined by Mary, Leciejewski, and Kathie Serif, and we are going to talk about sustainability in dining as well as organics recycling at Ohio State. So Mary, she currently serves as the Zero Waste Manager for Ohio State, and she aims to divert 90% of materials away from landfill by 2025 through recycling, composting, reuse, and waste prevention. She also leads the recycling and refuse services to manage daily waste streams for campus. And prior to Ohio State, she had held roles in advancing environmental sustainability at University at Albany and Ohio University. She received her BA at Provide College and her MS at Ohio State University. And she has helped us on multiple composting initiatives. And we are hoping to get a composting drop-off program off the ground sometime by the end of this semester. She has been very instrumental in helping us with that. And thank you, Mary, for joining us. I'm also going to introduce Kathie Serif. She serves as Associate Director of Operations, and she's responsible for oversight of half of Ohio State campus dining services, including the Central Production Kitchen, CPK, retail food locations at Ohio Union, University Catering, coffee shops, childcare, and more. And she has also led some large projects and initiatives, including guest services and zero waste initiatives. And as a part of the Zero Waste Initiative, she collaborates with faculty, staff, and students to lead dining services effort towards food diversion and reducing food waste. She received her bachelor's degree in restaurant management from the Ohio State University. And before joining OSU Dining Services, she worked over 25 years in private sector restaurant management. And during these 25 years, she had multiple roles as Director of Operations for several full-service Fortune 500 restaurant companies. And Kathie has been instrumental in advancing our Bagel Chips project, and she has been working with both Food Recovery Network, who is co-hosting this seminar with us today, as well as us. And we are also very thankful to make this collaboration with her. So the floor is all yours.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for the introduction. I also want to give a shout out. I know many of you on the call have been working with Molly Kathleen, who's our Zero Waste Coordinator. So you've been working with her directly for the compost drop-off program. So I don't want to take credit for her work, but we work closely together. Before we start, can I ask just for a quick overview of your groups and then what kind of student composition is made up of the folks here?
Sure. I see a couple of people from No Food Waste right here, and I know some of them are from the Food Science Department. One of us is a fellow past e-board member. I see Mallory right here, and I also see Alex on the call. Alex, if you recognize some of the students on the call, could you speak to that?
Yeah, so I see myself and a couple other people from the Food Recovery Network. So we're all very interested in hearing what you have to say. And I know we've worked with you guys before as well.
Awesome. Okay, so I can get started and start sharing my screen. I'm pretty informal when I talk. So if you have a question, try to throw it in the chat. And if I don't see it, just interrupt us. There's kind of a lot of information. And so just, I tried to create the presentation to be pretty basic. So if you guys feel like you know everything or that I'm, you already know everything, just please let me know and tell me like speed up. So I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, do you guys see the PowerPoint? Yes. Do you guys see the slides or do you see like the whole? Do you see the?
You see that? You see the sidebar?
Okay. Let me go to. Okay, there we go. So quickly, so we'll go over some of our organics recycling efforts at Ohio State so far. So once again, I'm Mary Leciejewski, working with Kathie Serif. we've been working closely together for at least 3 or 4 years now. So briefly before we get into, I want to put this down. There we go. Before we get into zero waste, I want to just remind everyone that zero waste is one of our goals here at Ohio State. So we have what we call 8 resource stewardship goals. The university has ambitious, aggressive goals related to our carbon footprint, the fleet's carbon footprint, carbon neutrality, purchasing locally sourced food, ecosystem services, which looks at how our landscape is managed, potable water consumption, zero waste, which we'll be talking about, building energy consumption, and preferred products, which looks at what we buy and how that affects our natural environment. So, after this talk today, if you have any interest in one of these topics, feel free to reach out to me and I can put you in touch with the correct subject matter expert here at the university. So this is the goal that I think about all day, every day at work. So the goal is to achieve zero waste by 2025 by diverting 90% of waste away from landfills. And then how we measure that is through what we call diversion rate. There's a big effort on campus annually to measure the amount of materials that we compost, recycle, and reuse divided by the total amount of materials. And that's standard for most universities. They attempt to put together a diversion rate. What I will say is where it varies across universities is that there's no real standard for what's included in diversion rates. So some California schools, which you might see have close to a 70% diversion rate, they may be including construction and demolition material, which is concrete and often wood and really heavy, whereas other schools will calculate mostly like your typical daily materials. So when we report, we don't include construction and demolition materials right now, but we're looking to try to get a baseline for those waste products. So this is our waste characterization trend since FY15. So FY15 is when the goal was set. And since then, as the university has grown, we have grown in our the amount of waste that we're handling significantly. So in FY19, we had over 25,000 tons of waste that came from the university. And we were really proud of that. In FY20, we started to shrink the amount of materials that we managed. So our diversion rate was also the highest that we had ever measured in FY20. So we really are progressing, even though we're not close to that 90% quite yet. So in FY20, we hit nearly 36% for our diversion rate. And why that's really notable is because typically people start to plateau at around 34% because many of the materials that are in your waste stream, there's not easy ways to handle it and to recycle it. So we're limited by regional infrastructure as well as global markets. So hitting that 36% really was a big effort by many departments across campus. And then we would have expected that we would have hit that 36% even if there wasn't any COVID. We did a little bit of modeling here, though, of course, if the campus had more occupants, we would have expected to have had to manage more waste. If we didn't
waste changed quite a bit with the onset of COVID. Some of the things we were able to divert have changed because everything's taken. Like for dining halls in particular, food's all put into packages and it's taken out. So you no longer have the reusable plates and glassware and things. So it's certainly been a change for lots of things that we've done.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Kathie. And then there's also challenges too, because so many of your restaurants are doing takeout. So it's hard to capture the post-consumer in the dining halls. But so the colors here represent trash, recycling, and organics. The gray is trash, the red is recycling, and then the green is organics. So you can see here also a steady increase in the amount of organics that we're collecting. Was there anything else on that slide, Kathie, that you want to point out?
No, ours are, for me, it's more specific to certain locations. One of the things that Mary and her team has really helped with is trying to get the CPK, which some people on the call have been on a tour of, to become a zero waste facility. And with that, it's really taken, that we felt to begin with that we were doing a really good job. And then Mary's team came in and helped to really track things, and we found the areas that we could improve on. And so being able to really make sure that the pre and post consumer waste for that location can go through a grinds to energy. And so we're getting close. We're not quite there yet, but we've had a few months where we've hit the 90% diversion rate. But really between the being able to recycle, so pallets are recycled, crates are recycled, bottles, jugs, plastics are recycled. Composting for us is more of taking things to the grinds to energy. And so Mary's got some slides that kind of go into that a little bit more. And then food waste, trying to make sure that through the teams that we've worked with student groups, that we've got lots of food, when it's left over, gets picked up and taken away. So all of that has helped us get to a much closer number. So I think for the CPK, you could see the numbers maybe flipped a little bit because our trash is mostly plastic where we cover things. So again, Mary's team has helped us identify lots of areas that we could make some improvements.
Yeah, and that zero waste building is like a great pilot for campus, because we know we want to expand that, but it's kind of like served as a test bed where we can, Kathie, your staff has been great with the educational efforts, but just really giving us the information that we need to say, okay, if we wanted to go zero waste, what would this take?
I have a question.
Sure, of course.
Something that is a little surprising to me is it doesn't look like there are big changes in the organics recycling or waste. Have you, so was there some type of composting going on in 2015, or what is that green bar of organics representing then versus now? Maybe you'll cover that too, but.
No, that's a great point. So when we refer to campus organics, it's not just food waste. So it's also green waste from campus. So we probably get about I don't know the exact number offhand, but it's probably 700 to 800 tons of green waste material that our campus landscape picks up and diverts.
Okay.
So that's included. Then we've also increased the amount of animal bedding that's coming from our research facilities. So like the RT, we've started to collect, they clean out rat cages all day. And so we started to divert that as well. So it's not just food waste, but something else that's important to mention that has been a limiting factor is the fact that we're limited by regional infrastructure. Or regional organics infrastructure. So I believe it was FY14 or FY15. We had one company called Eartha that we did coffee grounds to, and they ended up going out of business. So then that sort of had to be halted. And then there was a company called Innovative Organics that we were taking waste to in FY18 and FY19, and they since have, they had to move facility sites. So the biggest challenge for us in moving organics and moving the needle is really the regional infrastructure, which I can get into.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, sure, of course. And you know what? I wish I would have written how many tons that we are actually diverting, because it looks tiny here, but in terms of the amount of effort that it takes to get from this sliver to this sliver is really substantial. But just some quick information on terminology, just so that we can make sure that we're all on the same page. So we talk about pre-consumer versus post-consumer composting. So pre-consumer food waste refers to foods that you don't see by the consumer. So like when Kathie's team is in the CPK and they're trimming vegetable peels like carrot tops and pineapple, runs. So that material is often much easier to divert because it's behind the scenes. You only have to train like 10 people on what you need to put in the composting versus post-consumer, which is food waste that is produced by the end user of a product. And then that has more challenges because of potential for contamination. Unfortunately, you know, there's not that many people that think about waste. You know, they're usually just going about their day and maybe don't understand the challenges of when they put something in the wrong bin, what that causes downstream.
From a dining side, one of the things that we've done is in trying to train people. You know, our goal is, because we serve food, we're here for the students. And so you don't want to shame people for what they're doing, but trying to help teach that although an all you care to eat location is all you care to eat, it's not really, it shouldn't be all you care to take. So back in 2009, dining services went trayless and bagless. And part of that was in an effort to curb people just filling a tray so they didn't have to go back and get more, as opposed and just have it and then like, oh, now I'm full, I'm gonna throw it away. So there's been things, small steps that have happened. Along with that, we were able to cut down the amount of water we're using because all trays had to be washed once they were used. It cut down on chemicals that we're using because, you know, we had less chemical use because we're washing less. And again, the food waste went down a little bit because people had to carry in their hands versus on a tray. So the steps have been going along for quite a while, but a lot of it does come down to how do you teach somebody. You know, a lot of students come from home and maybe they ate a family meal and the food's on the table and this is what you have. You go into a dining hall where it seems like an endless supply. And so teaching folks portion control and tasting things and seeing what you like versus just saying, well, it's all there, I'm just going to take it. And because it's all you care to eat, it doesn't matter. So, you know, we always try to teach the side that the world produces enough food for everybody to eat. We just waste 40% of it. So we're trying to cut down that number.
That's a really good point. So quickly, just going over our initiatives at Ohio State. So pre-consumer is where we've seen the most success at Ohio State because you don't have the challenges of contamination. So Blackwell was one of our sites that got up and running with the grind to energy system, which I'll show you a video on in a second. But we were a test with that company, and it's worked out really well and has expanded to 5 different locations. So now we have a grind to energy system at CPK, Schottenstein. Oh, and then, so those are the grind to energies. And then there's 2 pulper systems, one at Kennedy and one at Ohio Union. But we also now have expanded our pre-consumer composting to Curl Market, Moral Traditions, and Scott Traditions, as well as Wexner Medical Center. And then we've, besides the food scrap composting, we do pre-consumer coffee ground composting, which has been great because we have student interns who are able to move that material. And I think this list is actually outdated. I feel like we're doing it more than just these, but
yeah, we are doing it at more locations than that, and some of them take it directly over to Waterman Farms and work with some of the composting there for the pH balance in the soil. We started off the program working with the Wexner Med Center to pick up coffee grounds from all coffee shops. It's gone down quite a bit this year because the coffee shops are not nearly as busy as they were, so we're not producing as much, but the amount of weight of things not going to the landfill were huge by this composting because coffee, wet grounds are really, really heavy. I mean, it was one of those things where it ended up being a pretty substantial impact with things being moved from a landfill to where it could be useful.
yeah, that's right, Kathie. And then also we're excited in FOD, in Facilities Operations Development, because now we partnered with our landscape operations. So they've started to use the coffee grounds around Muir Lake, where the plants like acidic soil. So they're using the coffee grounds instead of fertilizer, or they're testing that. So I will try to get this video up and we'll see if it'll work for me. But this will just show you the grind to energy program. Do you guys see that? The video?
It's not, it's just Tony. It's not
Oh
me.
yeah, that's right. Or are you guys still in the, I think you guys are in the PowerPoint. 1 second. Okay, that should do it, right? You're in YouTube?
Yep.
Mary,
turn it
if
up?
I can
Can't hear
interrupt real quick. I don't think we can hear the video. Is that the same for other people as well?
That's
Okay,
correct.
so-
Well, then I guess you guys, I can send you the video and you can watch it. I'm not that tech savvy. I know you guys are probably in Zoom's classes all day, but so I'll send that to you. But what it shows is our pulper systems, pulper and grinder systems.
So,
And what it does is it macerates the food waste, and then we can pick it up with a vacuum truck on campus. So FOD has a composting vacuum truck, and that actually goes to an anaerobic digester.
the Ohio Union has 3 separate pulpers. And so that's what they're getting ready to show that. But it is pretty amazing because that also can take the compostable containers where the grinds to energy is really food scraps, organic waste versus being able to do the compostable containers. They all have their different magic.
And then here is the list of our some of our post-consumer locations across campus right now. So Kennedy Commons, when you put the tray back, when you do normal traditional dining, non-COVID style, they'll actually scrape the plate waste into that pulper. Scott House, so we've been doing residential tests with post-consumer composting, and the sustained learning community has been integral to that program. Scott Traditions is the same thing as Kennedy Commons. You put the tray back. You don't, it's unfortunate because the students don't get to participate, but we do capture that food waste. Ohio Stadium at home football games, Mount and Pressey Hall, these are in the maintenance building, are faculty and staff tests of post-consumer. We are excited. We're now collecting the food waste from Buckeye Village Daycare and the Ackerman Road Daycare. So normally we typically like to reduce the amount of food waste before it comes to your plate. That's the most sustainable way. But when you have young children, you're required to serve them a certain amount of calories. So you have to give the child that doesn't eat, doesn't drink their milk every day. They have to receive that milk, and once they open it, that can't be reused. So there's not great reuse opportunity there, but we are collecting it for composting. And then these different Kinnear locations was another faculty and staff program that we started last year. Knowlton Hall Studio and Cafes, that was a student-led program. And then we're working on residential hall pilots and a drop-off station as well. So that covers all the places where we are collecting food scraps from, and now we can give you a little bit more information of where that goes. Before I do that, Kathie, do you have anything that I missed?
No, the only thing I was going to say, the only thing that's different at Scott is Scott's got a biodigester. So again, and Mary's got some shots that kind of go into the different, but a pulper macerates everything and takes compostables as well as food scraps. The grinds to energy is truly just organics that it grinds up. It doesn't take other waste in there. And then the biodigester, again, is more of just organic scraps, but it's a different system that it runs it through. All of them have the same thing, but that one doesn't get picked up. Both the pulper and the grinds to energy, you have another party that has to come and suck the liquids out for it to be turned into energy. The other one gets turned into wastewater.
Before I move forward, do I have any questions from the students? Looks like everyone's feeling good. Okay, so these are the different locations where our food scraps end up. So this is our coffee grounds and our dry organic material currently is going to our compost pad. We have a small compost pad over off Kenny Road. So 2566 Kenny Road is where the refuse department is located. So we're actually doing that on site, and then we're starting to reuse that across campus. We also have an earth tub at Waterman Farm. So this was probably launched, I want to say like 2010, 2011. So it's this small container that's large, and it has an auger that will turn the waste so that it can decompose more quickly. And that probably holds about 5 cubic yards. So it's relatively small, but it's an opportunity to collect coffee grounds and bagels, and sometimes like post-consumer compostable materials like serviceware. So this was the biodigestion system that Kathie was talking about. So there's one at Traditions at Scott and one at the Webster Medical Center. So the food is pulped, it's pumped into the biodigester, and then enzymes break it down. And then it goes through the municipal wastewater treatment system. And then the biosolids, like after it goes through that process, the biosolids then are sent to an anaerobic digester. So the solids do get composted. We're lucky in Columbus that that's the system. That's not necessarily true with all municipalities. And then this is the anaerobic digester that we take, that those biosolids will go to. And then this is also the location where our pulped food waste will go. So where our the food waste that we pick up from trucks in our vacuum truck. And then we have, for many of the locations which I had listed for post-consumer, or the food waste that is not pulped or macerated, this is currently going to the London Correctional Institution, where they have a large class 2 composting facility. And then that goes through a nonprofit called Go Zero, and Go Zero takes it there once a week. And what's a benefit about this location is that they can take the compostable serviceware, and because much of it is hand sorted, there's a higher level of contamination than any other location around our region. So before I move forward, are there any questions about where our waste is going?
Kathie, sorry, I have a question about Price Organics. I know at some point you had collaborated with Price Organics. Is that still happening, or is everything going to London, Ohio? Because Price Organics is right here in Columbus.
Mary could probably answer that question better than I can.
Okay.
We put ours on the outside door, and then somebody picks it up and takes it away. It's magic.
So I think you're talking about Price Farms, and Price Farms it's not actually right here in Columbus. It's probably about, I want to say it's 40 minutes away. So it's a bit of a drive. Okay. Price Farms is a big operation in their class 2 facility. They take a lot of our, in a normal year, our pre-consumer waste at football games. And if it's completely sorted, they'll take our post-consumer. So their operation is really sensitive to post-consumer contamination. So the way that their processing works, from my understanding, I don't work there, but this is what I feel like I've gleaned, is that they shred their material there because they sell compost. And when it goes through the shredder, if there's a piece of plastic, one plastic bag will then turn into 1,000 little plastic pieces. So they have a very low threshold for contamination. And then there's also, so that's one of the reasons why we utilize the London Institute.
Okay. Probably one of the largest problems that we have with post-consumer or with any of the trash pickup is the contamination part of it. It doesn't take much, even with Rumpke, who picks up our waste, is that if it's contaminated, they won't take it, or it just goes into the landfill. So no matter how much work you do, if you've got somebody who's not paying attention and they throw that plastic bag in or throw something that shouldn't be in there, that whole trash can or a load of it is then just goes to the landfill. I know we had done a pilot at Morrill on a post-consumer and went through kind of training of students as they finished eating, how to scrape things into different containers. It was very successful. So it can be done. I think that leads into the COVID impact. What has changed is that we don't have those abilities right now. And unfortunately, the other thing that we don't have is a great way to take care of all of the containers, even though they're compostable. If they're not put in a compostable place where they can get picked up, because that trash can, you can look at it's mixed trash. It's not just compostables. So that whole thing's going to go to landfill.
And the difference at Morrill, why we picked that as a test, one, because the USG students were really involved and they volunteered to do shifts to teach. I mean, they were there for like 2 weeks for most of the food shifts. And then also it's kind of a closed system. So you can control the types of products that are going to be the single-use products that are going to be inside the Morrill ecosystem. So so all your plates and utensils, none of them are plastic. It's all, in the normal times, it's they're all reusable. And then maybe there was, I think we identified like butter packets were plastic, or there was a few little products that, so you could teach people like, oh, only these products go in the landfill versus you can put all of this stuff in the compost. Versus if you're just walking around campus and like you can see in this location here, there's straws, there's cups, there's lids. And then with the compostable containers, when people are walking around eating, they often just throw all their trash in that compostable container. And so if that were to get in there, then that means every single one that has to be undone to sort that so it can be composted. So that's sort of the challenge. So just quickly, I want to give you guys a brief overview of what we're dealing with COVID. So there is as I'm sure if you're walking around campus, there's an increase in single-use disposables. We have to prioritize student safety. And so to do that, students aren't eating together in dining halls, they're doing to go. We're getting decreased back of house organics because that post-consumer plate waste is now being spread out throughout campus. So you go to your room, and normally where you could have, if you were in Morrill, you could have scraped it into compost. Now you're in your room and you don't have a compost option. And so that might be going to trash. The hope, of course, I know Kathie has pointed out, is that, hey, you have a container and you can just stick it in your fridge and eat it later. So, but we don't really have a great data set on that. It's a bit anecdotal. Also, this is related to our waste stream, but we switched many of our bathrooms from paper towels to hand dryers. And so now we've had to put paper towels back in because there's some concerns about health. And I think just from a staff perspective, we're limited in the amount of waste infrastructure assessments and characterizations that we can do, because this is not a typical year. So those can be pretty expensive to do a waste sort to understand, hey, what is in our waste stream, so that we can make a plan. But that probably is going to be on hold for some time.
Yeah, I mean, the COVID impact for dining, I know when things started, we changed all of our operations from how we handled things to everything being takeout. I mean, you can eat in a location, but up until probably last week when the weather changed, did you ever really see anybody eating inside? Just about everybody took it with them or ate outside. Sloopy's has a sit-down place to eat. We're lucky if we've got 3 tables being seated at any time, one time throughout the day. So there's very few people eating in. So our goal was, how do you package everything and not have everybody touch anything? Because again, when COVID first started, it was very, how do you keep the distance and make sure that everything is safe? So everything on top of being packaged into containers, then went into a bag, and then went into the silverware was all separately, and all of the individual condiments were put in separately. So there was a lot of waste. You could look outside. This is probably a more recent picture, because one of the things we've slowly started to step back on and saying, okay, do we have to bag every single item? Can we put out the container and let somebody just take it? We've gone back to single-use silverware where people can serve themselves and take what they want versus it being, we need to put it in. So we're not over giving people more than what they need. We're starting to go to single-use condiments where you can take your own condiments. And I've packed many of bags for this past semester for students coming to pick up food. And when somebody says ketchup or mustard or mayonnaise, you grab it and you put it in. It's not, is one enough? Is 3 enough? Is 4 too many? Everybody wants something different. So we are trying to slowly eke our way back into ways that we can continue to be a little more sustainable. But again, individual condiments, it's a ketchup packet versus having some place where you can just put that ketchup on your sandwich or whatever. So we're a long ways away from those days, I'm afraid, but we are trying to continue to make things slightly better, a lot less bags out there at least.
Mm-hmm. And then one of our challenges is just limiting of increasing the amount of organics this year is just limited staffing and just partner bandwidth. Like, let's be honest, it took a lot of effort for all of our operational folks to get campus ready for students to return and to try to, we've had to redesign so many different systems, furniture, cleaning, packaging, I'm sure that even the order system. So to say, hey, can you do this one extra thing? People just, everyone's run a little bit into the ground. Maybe not into the ground, but maybe they're just at capacity. So, and then it's been interesting with COVID, as we've seen a small decrease in compost and also recycling, our landfill waste amount has, at least that what we've been collecting in FOD has stayed steady. So that's been surprising. Even though there's less students on campus, that shows how much waste people are producing. Are there any questions on COVID of how that might affect your program?
I have like a big picture question. I'm sure there's a lot of things that are undecided right now, but given the impacts of COVID, does the 2025 zero waste goal still hold?
It's a great question.
Oh gosh, that is a great question. I can say we're not changing it at the moment. We don't know. Okay. I don't know. We don't know how long we're going to be doing the takeout model and having to work around this, the COVID impacts. So like, I know at one point we were talking over the summer of like, oh, could we do a reusable container? But you're not going to switch to everyone. You're not going to implement a full reusable container system for all the students if, in 10 weeks, you're going to go back to eating indoors, which it doesn't look like we're doing now. But to think about how do we redesign our systems for a temporary system, hopefully a temporary system or situation has been challenging. But I do appreciate your question, and I think COVID, at least the next couple of years, is going to make it harder. But we're still moving forward with different pilot projects and things that we can do.
I think if we change the goal, it's too easy to just say, okay, well, we can stop now, as opposed to saying, okay, what incremental changes can we make? And honestly, looking to people who are using things and getting feedback back, saying, hey, you know what? Have you tried this? Or, what we're okay with. We stopped doing bags because we had a request saying, hey, do you have to put everything in a bag? Originally at the very first onset, it was everything has to be bagged so that it's separate, and all somebody has to do is come in and grab that bag and walk off. Silverware, packets where it's got salt, pepper, fork, knife, spoon, and everything in a packet. Then you've got trash on the outside of that, and you've got things that people don't need. So again, trying to come up with ways. It is a work in progress, and I think that it will continue to be a work in progress until the day we go back to whatever the new normal is, because I don't think anything is going to be back to exactly how it was. Everything will change in some way, shape, or form.
And yeah, I think where we've been really encouraged too, Kathie, is it's not just us looking at the amount of single-use things going, oh my God, that's so heartbreaking. We've heard it from students too.
Mm-hmm.
And so students, you know, over the past couple of years have adopted that culture of using your My Cup instead of a cup. You know, some students certainly brought their own reusable straws. That was really popular for a while, or their reusable silverware. And so now to see all the single use, we're definitely getting pushed back.
Well, and that's where you think of all the steps that were made to move towards zero waste or reducing waste that have stopped. I mean, the reusable cup, you can't reuse a cup, so you get a new one each time. Coffee shops used to have where you could bring in your own cup. And our incentive was, we'll give you a discount for you bringing in a cup because we want to have less waste. And, you know, that went by the wayside. So many of the things that have been implemented, it doesn't mean they won't come back. So they're just paused. But it is disheartening and gives you a little bit of anxiety when you think of how far you had come and what the next steps were going to be, as opposed to stepping back and saying, wait, everything's on hold.
And then just one other note is, I think that our university waste profile is so big that we often think of it as, just because it's the stuff that we touch, we get really personal with, I want to use my reusable straw and I'm doing the right thing. But you don't want to think about the whole system, because that can often be big. But there's other places where we can make progress toward the zero waste goal, where right now we know, okay, we're not going to decrease single-use disposables too much at this point for safety. And just a quick overview. I know, I'm trying to look at our time. Okay, it's 4:45. I want to leave time for questions. But over this past summer, we used this time, Molly, Kathleen, who you've been working with, designing an organics waste master plan, and looking at different targets. So phase one, thinking of expanding existing programs, expansion by building type. So not just looking at food service establishments, but also looking at our greenhouses on campus. We realized some of those locations, our research greenhouses weren't composting as much as they could have, or didn't have as much access. And then residence halls, where there's relevant learning communities. We can continue to have those see those as low-hanging fruits. We're just, and we're looking at building route density for efficiency. So now we're actually, which is exciting, we're at the point where we have so many locations across campus that we're making it efficient to pick up that waste. And then I'll just show you the RPAC data. So this was from a waste audit that we did probably 2019, year and a half ago now. And so this has two relevant points. So this shows you your landfill waste as well as the recycling for the total waste stream. And when we look at our landfill waste, you can see what a huge percentage the compost is compared to the recycling. So if we're gonna remove, if we're gonna send less waste to landfill, the biggest opportunity is that organics piece. The other piece that's important is of this red sliver of the pie of our total waste stream, our recycling stream. We can see that organics makes up too big of a piece of our recycling stream. So our materials recovery facility does not, they really only allow between 5 and 10% contamination. And that's until we start having issues, because they of course have to sort it out into different material types. So if we start composting here, will we reduce the recycling stream contamination as we increase the amount of waste that we send to organics recycling? So that's all I have for the formal presentation. I'm happy to open it up to questions or talk through your project.
If anyone has a question, you can just unmute yourself or just put it in the chat.
no one has any questions, I would like to know how your food rescue efforts are going this semester with COVID.
Well, I just wanted to throw out a shout out as well to the 3 groups that we work with the most, well, besides your group, Kathie, we started off with wasted opportunities, and that kind of got things with dining started, which then kind of led it to the Food Recovery Network, which is where our big portion of our food went from sitting and going into the landfill, because we can only send things to Mid-Ohio Food Bank or some of the local charities in large quantities. But being able to really get the food where it's smaller amounts, but when you have smaller amounts from 20 locations picked up, it's been diverted. And that's really been a great partnership that we've had. And so the student group they've done great jobs with picking things up. They also do a great job with picking up large quantities when it comes to the end of the semester and fall breaks. And then really to be able to get to the Bagel project, which I think is really been a fun thing to watch and see it get rolled out. So there's been lots of really wonderful partnerships. And I just wanted to kind of do a quick shout out and say thank you for allowing dining to help be part of that.
Of course, yeah, the Bagel Chips project has been fun. It's interesting to see how many different pieces come into play, not just the food science part of it, but everything from policy to logistics. And Food Recovery Network has been a great partner in that. So thank you to them. While people are thinking of questions, I have one question about the diversion rates that you showed. By fiscal year. So I'm assuming those are model numbers and not measured. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, is the food waste and the recyclable waste being measured right now?
Yeah, so let me go back to that slide, make sure we're on the same page. So this is the waste characterization trend slide for diversion rate. So it's measured in a variety of ways. So most of them are accurate actual measures, because when we drop waste off at the landfill or the recycling MRF, you have your trucks weigh in when you go in, and then you weigh out when you leave. And so then that difference, then you get charged by that difference. And so I would probably, I mean, if I'm ballparking, maybe 80 to 85% of it is actual weights. And then we probably have to ballpark the rest, and it's usually based on volume. So the EPA has a conversion factor chart that we'll use. So like, for example, we have one recycling container that gets picked up by SWACO. We know it's commingled, it gets picked up, you know, we have the frequency, and so we calculate it that way.
That's really impressive. I wouldn't have imagined that this much is being actually measured, but that's great. Thank you.
That's a good question. Well, you know, they want to charge you by the amount of trash that you generate. So that's usually how it goes. So if you have a bill connected to it, you just follow the money.
Any other questions out there?
Yeah, I'll say something. Yeah, thank you for the shout out, Kathie and Mary and Aishwarya. It's all been a great pleasure working with you guys, sharing our visions to further the mission of, you know, reducing food waste. And to answer Mary's question, we have been doing pretty good in terms of still operating under COVID. Of course, now that, you know, student organizations are allowed to meet, which in our case means we can have 2 people go on pickups and help each other out. That's been huge for us. The interesting thing that we've seen is that the pantry that we worked with a lot, Star House, they've been seeing actually less turnout for people who need food. So we've been forced to kind of diversify and form new relationships with new pantries all over Columbus. And we've also expanded to doing a couple other kind of partnerships with, you know, or like helping out a pantry, you know, get donations from Starbucks, for example, or like a Bob Evans or something once a week. So we've been seeing a lot more, you know, interest in our services and what we can provide. And Yeah, I mean, it's testament to like the strength of the relationship that we have with you guys, and the good work that we're able to do and continue to be able to do. So I'm looking forward to a productive rest of the semester, and hopefully we can get all the food in the pre-Thanksgiving break pickup sorted out ahead of time.
That's awesome. Can I ask, do you guys have a strong relationship with Wexner as well? Because I know they do prepared food and they divert from it. Okay.
So Wexner we've been trying to break into Wexner for a while now. Every time we reach out and email them, we get somewhere and then, interest falls off or they have other things to work on. This semester, we didn't focus as much as working with them because we wanted to make sure that we could continue doing what we were doing because of COVID before we expanded. But I think going forward, we're definitely going to try to, make more inroads with our contacts there to try to get some more food recovered, because like you said, we know that there's a lot of potential there for us to do some stuff. We just haven't really been able to quite work out the details yet.
Yeah, I totally understand. And I think Wexner Medical Center is like a little bit more challenging because of access to the building. I know when our students started to do the compost pickups, they had to get past a security check, and I'm not sure if your team would need to do that or need to be badged or anything, but I'm happy to put you in touch with Lauren Cook from the medical center, and she's their sustainability lead. I don't know if you've been in touch with her, but she'd be able to help you get in touch with the right people.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. I'd really appreciate that contact.
Yeah, of course.
I have kind of a philosophical question along the lines of the COVID discussion. I feel like there's kind of two things going on now. I think there's a shift in focus in a way away from sustainability and focusing on cleanliness and safety of food. But then there's also, I feel like with COVID, we've kind of amplified, or people have started to really notice the issues in the food system. So do you guys see moving forward, maybe once some of these initial shocks of COVID dissipate, do you think that people are going to be more interested in sustainability, or do you think that it's going to be less of a focus now that kind of health and safety are more of a focus? Where do you see all of this playing in long term? Does that make sense?
Yeah. You want to take that one, Kathie, and then?
Yeah, I think that we'll find that people are, when it comes to the earth, people care about it. So I don't think that's going to go away. I think that people will renew their effort towards that. I'm hoping that the cleanliness part, with people learning to wash their hands and more frequently, stays, because people should have always done that. So I think that's just a positive benefit of COVID, if there is one. But I do think people will continue to want to take care of the earth and make sure that we're doing the right thing. And I think that with the sustainability part, people are going to stay with it. I think with the food rescue part, it becomes twofold. It's not only making sure food doesn't get wasted and get put into a landfill, it's helping people. And so it becomes a true win-win, where food that is extra, because there's always going to be some that's extra, gets taken to a place. So I'm hoping that will become a larger focus on what can we continue to do to get good food in the right places.
Yeah, thank you, Kathie. I think I agree. And I would say in FOD, we were charged with, since it was sort of a negative time over summer, we didn't know if we were going to open. Our boss charged us with coming up with quantifying the positive benefits of COVID. So if you think about all of the huge switch in the med center to telehealth, think of the amount of trips that reduces. It's over 2 million trips just commuting back and forth, where now you can do that over Zoom. You weren't able to do that before March. And then we think of that for our employees too, as well as students. If folks can do that from home, reduce the amount of trips, it's probably in the future, we're not going to be working from home 5 days a week, but okay, if you have the option, you can do it 3 days a week. What kind of carbon benefit is there? And then we saw huge energy, water savings, as well as a prioritization for our ecosystem services. So I think what COVID showed us is how important our green space is on campus. Like, think of, like, we have 4 or 5 outdoor classrooms now, and they put the circles on the oval because that's where people can be to stay safe. So that was another positive benefit. So I know it can be frustrating, especially with waste and single-use disposables, and as a person who thinks about that all the time. But I think it's important too to think, okay, like, how can we use this time of adaptation to move the needle for all of the sustainability goals?
It's a great point. Thanks.
Thanks for that question, Katie. Is there anything else out there? Any last thoughts or questions? Mary and Kathie, is there anything that you wanted to touch on that you didn't get time for?
No, I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate everyone's interest, and with you, I want you to know how much power you have as students, and to be advocates. So when we have a group of students that's advocating for a particular project, and it really helps us move the needle forward, and push through initiatives and advocate for funding. So just keep continuing to keep the faith and push your administration.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah, I think our collaboration with FOD and dining has been a good, like, I don't know how to say it, but like a good transition, especially when other entities have been opposing what we are doing. It's good to have groups who are interested and willing to take our kind of ideas forward. So thank you for collaborating with us, and thanks for participating in today's talk. We really appreciate your time. If there's no other questions out there, we can end for today.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Appreciate it. Bye, everyone.